Dr. Jazz.
I'll just jump in. I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
I have so many CDs of you and have you on so many CDs, but you've been quite active lately. And I want to start this talk with Symphony,
Sure.
the last piano solo album that you
Mhm.
did. And I've listened to it, and it's very, very much different, at least to my ears, as much knowing your music, because it's very gentle. There are some rougher moments, but this one, I think it's really like, I don't know, it has some more of a gentle flow. Like, what's the story behind this album, and how do you approach actually playing solo? What solo piano?
Well, I don't approach it at all. I try to stay away from it as much as possible. But I'm going to explain myself. Um, I think, music has become a very intellectual art form in many
Yeah.
ways. I
Yes.
mean, not in many ways. You still have, popular artists or who make music for please the goal of pleasing the audiences, and that's fine. We need that,
Sure.
sometimes, like lighter stuff that we can enjoy without having to suffer through it. But I feel like with years I've discovered the virtue of more simplicity, so to speak. Being a jazz musician, I've fallen into all the usual traps of overthinking, of overcomplicating, of
Yeah.
trying to, you know, write complicated originals and odd meters and exotic chord progressions, and you name it. I've kind of like I had to try everything in order to see if it worked. And at some point in my life, I think it did work in a way,
Yeah.
but when I listen to those recordings, I don't feel it's me. I feel like, who's this guy playing? Who wrote that tune? It feels very remote from me now, some of it.
Mhm.
But recently, I have discovered that I try to project myself back to where I was a kid, where I was like 10 years old and sitting at the piano, and what was I really looking for?
Mhm.
And I realized that what I was looking for was very simple, actually. I was looking to escape the real world. I'm oversimplifying, but that's pretty much,
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's what music means. Yeah,
yeah,
in
not
a way.
always, because many times you have, song that, talk about real stuff, or I feel like a lot of music doesn't bring you back to any other world. It's very real, very normal. Listen to even in jazz. I mean, actually, a lot of jazz. You listen to people, you're like, oh, great, he plays great, great technique, great, all those phrases, but you're still in the place where you're listening to it. They impress you. They can, really send you a very, very spectacular form of energy and everything, but you're still there. You're still in the real world. And I remember myself at the age of 8 or 10 listening to people like Louis Armstrong, Biggs Bader Baker, because
Mhm.
at the time I was listening to traditional jazz, which was all my uncles like. They hated modern jazz. And when I heard a few notes of Biggs, I was projected into some unknown galaxy,
Mhm.
and then I discovered the same thing later when I discovered the depths of some of what we call classical music, like Mozart or Beethoven or Chopin. I was like, I'm not here anymore. I'm somewhere else.
Mhm.
And then I would say over the years, and particularly recently, as I've discovered that when I play music, I need that feeling with my own music, not only while I'm playing it, but also when I'm listening to it. So I've been recorded. I record over the years. I've recorded myself a lot because I think for an improviser, you have to listen back to what you do, and
Mhm.
because sometimes you are in the fantasy world of I'm so good, it's so great, and then you listen and you're like, oh, maybe not. And so listening back is an important thing. And I discovered that some elements of my musical language or my musical mind were actually more simple than what I thought.
Mhm.
And when I heard them, they did succeed in sending me to some other place, and I was like, if I can do it to myself, that's my ultimate goal, because that's what I was looking for to begin with in the work of other musicians when I was younger. And so Symphony was exactly that. Symphony, I recorded with a great saxophone player by the name of José Migueles, who lives in Spain, in Galicia. And we did his album, which is a great album called Contradictio on Origin Records. And then at the end, he said, well, we have still studio time because we've been just improvising and, it went really well. And we still have 2 or 3 hours. Do you want to record a solo piano just for fun? You have a beautiful Steinway, great sound, perfect conditions. The studio is magnificent. We're in studio in Matosinhos in Portugal. I was like, yeah, I'm tired. We've played a lot, but what the hell, I'm just going to play and see what happens. And I do remember that I started playing and then I was not there anymore. I was too tired to still be part of the real world, so to speak. I don't know which drugs appeared in my brain. Natural drugs, I have to emphasize this, maybe a glass of wine or two, I can't remember. But mainly what happened is that I suddenly felt something like very, some people would say spiritual, some people would say metaphysical. I just, I'm very, very wary of excessive words, of the exaggerated words, to describe something that was very simple, which was since we had played a lot, I was tired, I was full of music, I just disappeared behind the piano basically and played for 45 minutes and hardly remembered anything after I was done. I was like, that's it. Well, we'll see. And Jose came out of the booth and he said, wow, that was incredible, man. You have to release this. I was like, oh, I don't even remember a note, so I listened in a couple of days and we'll see what happens. And when I listened back to it, at the beginning, I was taken aback. I was like, is this me? Who's playing? I had that feeling of not recognizing myself, but in a good way. And then I realized that, I had sent myself to a trip in space or something. And that decided me that, yes, indeed, I should release it because I think it's a deep part of myself that I have not really, I have actually expressed it a lot during sessions, during rehearsal, playing with my friends over the years. But for some reason, as soon as it was about releasing something, you have somebody in the booth and it sends you to the real world. And in a way, you don't dig that deep into yourself, and on that particular occurrence, I did. And since that, I had that revelation that I can do that in concerts and that I can do that during recordings. I just have to forget completely where I am, forget about all the, I would say, circumstances, I'm playing for people, I'm recording. Yeah. I just have to disappear. But that I can do mainly, I would say, pretty exclusively only if I'm improvising from scratch, which means no set list, no anticipation about which tune I'm going to play, no nothing. Just sit at the piano, play, and start from scratch. And that's what I've been doing in my concert, solo and trio, by the way, since now quite a few months and years. And I think that's what I want to do. I don't want to say until the end, because, maybe 2 years from now, I will have a different perspective. I like to change perspective. I like to question myself. I like to start to try new things. And maybe I will go back to writing originals or writing stuff. But for now, that's really what I want to do. Sit, play, forget, and enjoy the moment and all the emotion that come with it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And like I said in the beginning, because it's so different than what I'm used to of you. And kind of makes sense what you said now, yeah. It's really nice that you release this, that the people hear this side of you like this. Really,
it also has I don't know how it's related, but that kind of simplicity that I have in me somewhere tends to come out more clearly when I am in that kind of mind frame. I've been actually releasing stuff before Symphony that was in that spirit, stuff that I released. Maybe you didn't hear it, or it has not been released on physical CD. It was more like EPs and singles that I released on Just in Time. One was called children's scenes, I believe. I can't remember the title of my own work.
I'll check it out. I don't know.
Children's scenes. Another one was called Visions. Actually, there was Visions, and then there was Children's scenes. Those two I did in my studio here at McGill on my piano is my own recording equipment, which is really good. And I love my piano. We've been together since many years, even more than my current wife. I hope she's not too jealous. But I did play in that spirit of, I was in my studio, but alone.
Yeah.
In the place that I like, on the piano that I'm really familiar with. And I was in that in that mind frame. And if you listen to those Visions and Children's scenes, I think you will find the same. I mean, it was almost like an anticipation of what happened with Symphony, but I was in a similar mind frame. And that too convinced me that that's what I had to do at this point in my life, really what I call instant composition. Not only does it allow me to play simpler stuff, but I also realize that I do stuff that is way more tightly constructed, especially on long forms. I've actually had a grant in Canada to experiment on, I would say, symphonic forms on solo piano, and I really, really realized during the course of that. Of that year where I did it, that was a sabbatical year at McGill. So that I can play for 40 minutes and build something then the construction falls down. It seems contradictory, but I think music has a way to construct itself if you just let it. And that's symphonies for me was not the first time I did it, but it's definitely the first time I released it, on the physical CD and in that type of long form thing.
Yeah. You mentioned that you also do this in trio. And at the same time, while you released Symphony, you released You Are the Song, which kind of shows this other side of you. And
correct, yes. Yes.
Sorry, I wanted to ask you just there we have like Impressions, and The Song Is You, and Straight No Chaser, and you kind of do what this trio is actually famous for. You kind of take, I love what you did with Straight No Chaser. It's like the theme kind of enters around the third minute, and it's like in a completely different way than it's been done like 600 times before. Like, we've heard that so many times. And
you mean 6-7 times?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do you, or especially with the trio, approach a standard? I mean, how do you arrange it? And especially your story with Francois and Ari, how did that also begin? It's kind of two questions, but.
Well, You Have a Song. You're right. It's a different side, of. Well, first of all, it's not my trio. It's a co-leadership, and and my intention was actually to make a much more improvised album at the outset.
Oh, really?
Because I thought that, but I felt like when we're together, we kind of like interfere us to play a certain way. So I didn't want to actually impose anything. So we just sat in the studio and started playing. We played for like 3 hours.
Oh.
And then I was like, wow, I was, I was maybe planning to improvise more. There we are with Straight No Chaser and The Song Is You and Alice in Wonderland. And I was like, well, if it happened, it happened. That's what it was meant to be. Music just made us play that. I mean, we played for like 3 hours almost without stopping, almost without talking, and that's how most of our albums have been made. And so I was like, well, that's what it is. I'm not going to contradict the music, so to speak, and say, yeah, we should. No, that's what it is. And I like the result. If I didn't like the result, of course, that would have been different, but I like the result. And I said, well, that's us. And in a way, it's not that different from what I talked before, because each time we started the standard, we just didn't talk or didn't know what we were doing. Everything kind of like came out the way it came out, naturally, with no preparation, no discussion, no arrangement. The arrangement created itself during
Oh, wow.
the playing. Exactly like, you know, what I said, music has a way of constructing itself in the moment. If you let it do it, it will do it. So Straight No Chaser, we just started. Francois started with that kind of like groove, and
Yeah.
then I had you know, it just music plays us. You know, let's make it simple. Music plays us, and music played us that way that day. It was just 3 hours of studio, and all that. We have enough. We have enough for a second album, by the way, because well, that's 3 hours of music. But to me, it's not another side. It's just another way that the music expresses itself. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to sound extremely pretentious, but if you listen to Beethoven's music, you have the Ninth Symphony, and then you have the Bagatelle for piano,
Yeah.
which are completely at the opposite of the spectrum, but it's still Beethoven. You recognize him from the first note. It's just a different way for the music to express itself, to construct itself. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 3 minutes, but I don't think in the essence, I think it's exactly the same, you see. But mainly when I play trio these days, especially not maybe with Francois and Ari, even though we do it quite a lot too, it tends to be more and more improvised. I played at the Green Mill in Chicago recently with fantastic musicians, Sam Minai on bass, Gerard Lippi on drums, and I also play a lot here in Montreal with some great Canadian musicians, like such as Morgan Moore, Samuel Joly, and others. And we step on stage and we improvise. And the last gigs I did with those people were, I would say, they were standards, but I would say at least 80% was just completely improvised music. And again, the construction is there, and more so. So maybe I'm improving, you know, I hope so.
Yeah, it's listening. Yeah, it's just about, yeah, in the end that you listen to each other and kind of what's happening, right? That's jazz also in improvised music. So
Yeah, well, if you think about it, not that many people do it these days. You know,
yeah.
Most people come on stage with a set list and they write music, and it can be marvelous. But I feel like my path is more what I'm doing now, which is like put myself on dictation and see what music has to tell me and express it the best at the best of my abilities.
Yeah.
And like I said, to me, the main improvement is about construction, and that's something that's very important to me. Listening to a 40-minute piece, and you can feel the arc. You know, you can feel the story. It's not just the moments, you know, one after the other. And that, I think, has gotten better with years. It's a long process, you know.
Yeah, we learn, hopefully, and improve all the time.
Yeah.
You mentioned Bix and Lewis before, and Armstrong. And how did you get into jazz? I know you're from Paris, from France, and what got you excited for jazz, actually? Like, you know, we're talking, let's say, also then early or mid 70s when, you know, fusion came and it was on the rise, and the French scene was extremely rich, Paris especially, since the 60s already and until now. And so what's your story there? Like your entry into jazz? And
Yeah, I've always been a bit of an outsider when it comes to scenes. You know, I mean, I feel like a great artist is a world in itself. So I don't really, it doesn't matter to me where they're from or where, like I said, like when it comes to politics and geography, I'm out of it. You know, I'm not sure it has benefited me, you know, because, you know, politics is fortunately important in this business. But I've always felt like when it's about music, suddenly those things should not matter anymore. That's only my take, you know. Like I said,
I agree, man. Yeah,
it's a bit of an outsider take. But anyway, my uncles, you know, again, they came home one day. It was actually not home; it was their home in the suburbs of Paris, and they said, "We found that Big Spider Baker album that we were looking for years. We finally found it in some store, and they played it, and they looked so excited. They were looking for that Bix record. They were big fans of Bix. And at the time, I had heard jazz. I think I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I think I loved it. I mean, I have trouble remembering, it's so far away. But when they put that Bix out, that Bix vinyl on the electrophone, like we said at the time, you know, that big thing, you know, that the brand was Dual, I remember, DUAL. And those big machines that smell like old stuff. I loved that.
Yeah.
And there was also this physical thing of the vinyl turning. It was a whole poetic experience. And I started listening to that music, and I heard Bix and the sound and everything, and I was transfixed. I think the thing that touched me the most is that there was such a mystery to his music. Like every note was clean and clear. It was like, but it was very mysterious also. It was very like untouchable. Like, where is this guy? You could feel that he was not part of. Bix was a notoriously, he was not of this world. That's what killed him, by the way. And he wanted to escape the world, and he used some unfortunate means to do that, like some others later. Artists want to get out of the real world. So, sometimes music is not enough, and they use other means, unfortunately, which I never did, thank God. But Bix, you can hear that he's not here. You can hear that he's somewhere else. It's very, very clear in the way he plays. And you're like, and that I think really still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. This really, I got punched in the face by that. I was like, wow, this is like, I'm having like goosebumps right now. It's like, wow, this is something that's not part of it's another universe. Like Schopenhauer said, it's the universe once again. It's a different universe. It has nothing to do with with reality. And that's when I fell in love with it. And my uncle said, it's all improvised. I was like, what? And I was like, there. And then I fell in love with this music. I was like, I want to know more of it. So I listened, I discovered more stuff. And they bought me lots of records, like Louis Armstrong Got 5 and Fletcher Henderson and early Duke Ellington and Coleman Hawkins, Django Reinhardt, Sidney Bechet. I couldn't believe what I heard. I was like, this is magic. This music is magic. Suddenly I'm not a kid anymore. I'm like I'm on this wonderful enchanted world, and that's what happened. And then it totally. I guess it went so far that I became a musician later, but that's when it happened. And to me, I'm still that kid. I'm still that music lover, that kid lover of jazz. Doesn't really matter that I'm playing the piano. All I want to do is a music lover. Playing the piano is incidental,
That's a mean. Yeah, it means, yeah. Did you study then jazz, or did you learn it, or how did you learn the scales and?
I never learned the scales. I mean,
did you go to university or
No, nothing.
Really?
No musical. I'm totally self-taught musically.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I never had a jazz lesson, a music lesson in my life, so I saved lots of money, obviously.
Yes.
Shouldn't say that because I'm a professor at McGill. So,
but yeah,
I mean, times are different. But at the time, most jazz musicians were self-taught. I was not an exception. It was more the rule than the exception at the time.
Exactly.
In 1968, 16, 17. But we learned from the records. I mean, you bought a record, you listened to it, and you that was the lesson. And what I did, and that's what I tell my students to do now. And it seems like I'm one of the only teachers to do this. I tell them, just don't touch the instrument. Don't even think you're a musician. Just listen to as much as you can.
Yep.
Tap the rhythms, sing the melodies, try to improvise on the recording, just sing, tap, and dance. Don't forget about your instrument. Forget you're a musician. Just like I said, a music lover. Get the physical feel of it, first. And that's what I did, actually. That's what I did before. I had some piano lessons with a charming old lady, but, she initiated me to Bach, to Mozart, easy Beethoven sonatas, which are not easy at all, by the way.
Yeah.
And she was fantastic. And she gave me a little bit of, I would say, the fundamentals of the piano. But when it comes to jazz, my teachers are still at home in my vinyl collection. I kept those vinyl records very precious. They're priceless to me. They're still with me. So, like I said, early Duke, Coleman Hawkins, etc. And of course, all the big vinyl, which I rebought recently because the old one was such in bad shape. And when you heard those people on the records, that was the best lesson, and it still is the best lesson I can think of.
Yeah. So nicely put. Yeah. This is Also, many times when I have also workshops, I tell students like put on a record, listen to the
Don't
record.
do anything.
Yeah, it's
Don't
part
do
of the
anything.
rehearsal, right? It's, I mean,
Don't do anything. Don't
listen
think
for
you're
1
a
hour.
musician.
Yeah,
Don't say, oh, what can I get? What can I use from that? No,
yeah,
just fall in love.
yeah.
You know, when you meet someone, you know, you're not, oh, what can I do with this person? You know, that's not love.
Mm,
I mean, you know, unless you want to marry a very rich person, and you know, but I mean, you know, when you fall in love, you fall in love. You don't even sometimes you don't even know the person. It's love at first sight. For me, music should be that. I mean,
yeah,
ideally, and
yeah,
and the thing is, you know, now people have the internet. It's so much easier.
yeah, yeah.
You go to YouTube. We had to bother to buy the vinyl and bring the thing back a few millimeters to hear that phrase that we couldn't catch and this and that. Now people have YouTube. They can slow and they don't. And it's almost like it kind of killed the passion because it's too easy. You know what?
True. It's
So
true.
sometimes I feel like I said to people, don't go to YouTube, buy vinyls, put them on a turntable and do what I, because if it's difficult, it will actually have a deeper impact on you.
Yeah, and if you spend
Because
money,
within,
it's also you more appreciate it, right?
exactly,
That's
because on
true.
the internet, it's too easy. And
Yeah,
that I think has the reverse effect that it makes people less interested or prevent them from going deeper. It's weird, right? Because it
yeah, yeah,
should be easier. It should be easier, but it's not.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I remember like it was CDs, and I went, I skipped lunch for the whole week to buy, I don't know, Nefertiti by Miles, and then I bought that CD and I played that like,
You know, even
all the
CDs were
time. That's
magical. You
yeah,
you could go back with the
liner
button
notes.
and
Yeah, yeah,
without doing this, and you know,
exactly.
CD already was
Yeah,
almost too easy already. You know, but the internet, as you know,
yeah, yeah.
as incredibly powerful and practical as it is, tends to have the reverse effect.
I agree.
Strangely, I think the human mind likes, you know, the material stuff and the painstaking process. You know, I think our brains are divided
True.
for that. You know.
You remember that. Yeah. Uh, you mentioned before that you never belonged to scenes, but I still wanted to ask you, prior to you moving to New York, you played with Aldo Romano, you're on Elizabeth Contomanu, Andre Ceccarelli's records. So basically you started to play with really many people in Paris.
Right.
How did you become integrated still in that scene or connecting with those people? And
But again,
why did you then decide to move to New York after you kind of started to play with everyone almost in the Paris scene?
it became a bit too easy, I guess. You see, I guess I don't like it when it's too easy. Well, I had my share of not easy stuff, you know, to this day. So I guess I had what I was looking for. But I never saw things in terms of scene. That's the thing. I always saw stuff in terms of the individuals that I was meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, there was a Parisian scene, and it was a great scene. I agree with you. It was, you know, there were lots of fantastic musicians. I played with Christian Escudé, who died
Oh yeah,
recently,
exactly.
unfortunately. I played with Aldo. I played with, uh, but for me, I mean, I never saw them as part of the scene. I saw them as people.
Yeah, yeah, of course. They are
And
primarily
they
people.
were very different from each other, by the way. You know, Elizabeth's music is extremely different from Aldo's music, which is
Of
very
course.
different from etc. etc. But I never really, you know, I guess I'm a very individualistic person, and I always thought that what was important was the person, the people that I was playing with, and not some bigger, I would say, context that they would belong to, including nationality or race
Sure.
or you name it. You know, I was always like, you know, when I met Richard Bona, you know, whom I'm sure you know, and we started
Yeah,
playing
yeah.
together. Oh, I never said I met this great, you know, African musician from Cameroon. No, I said I met this genius. He was a genius to me. I mean, he
Yes.
could have been, you know, he could have come from Antarctica, which is not the case, obviously. But you know, he was just a genius. You know, with whom suddenly I was discovering new ways of making music, and that to me was so. Of course, he had these African roots. It's, you know, there's no way of, you cannot deny that, you know, your roots are important and mine are probably as well. But at the end of the day, he was Richard Bona. I've never heard any Cameroon bass player play like Richard Bona. Not even close, not even remotely similar. So he plays like nobody else. So that's what matters, you know. I mean, if you say, "Oh, I love this German musician, Ludwig van Beethoven," you know, like, first of all, he might have been a bit Dutch, you know, with the Van, you know, Van Beethoven. But you know, Beethoven is Beethoven.
Yeah.
Or you would say, "Oh, Chopin, this half Polish, half French guy." Have we ever heard anybody half Polish, half French, or even Polish or French who did what Chopin did musically? You know, those people are unique. It's a unique, and again, they build a particular world that nobody else has built and that nobody else has reached. You know, it's their universe. So I think that's what important, and to me, that's how I see things. You know.
So basically, you moved to New York because
I didn't answer your question. No, I would say no. I wouldn't. Yeah, too easy. It's never too easy.
I know, I'm kidding.
But I wish. But no, I moved to New York because for two reasons. One good one and maybe a less good one, to be honest. I was never, perhaps I'm going to give you for the first time the honest answer to that question. But the first good reason was I needed to start afresh. I needed to be plunged in a fresh perspective. To me, you know, routine is the most dangerous thing in music. You start being in your environment, playing with your friends and your people you know, and then you can see the whole arc of your life. And I've never liked that. Even at my age, I don't like it. So at some point, I was like, yeah, I can start to see how my life is going to go, and I don't like that feeling. And also, there are so many more musicians that I'm never going to meet if I stay like there, and it's going to be very, I would say, limited, because I was making some really good music with those people, and I would say, but to me, I was missing on a lot of things that I had to discover. That's also the reason why I went to Brazil a couple of times. I wanted to hear new people, play with new people. So being a jazz musician, New York seemed like a logical choice. And when I did go there, I did meet new musicians, heard a different sound, a different way of approaching this music, a different feel in the rhythm sections. And I was like, wow, that's what I was looking for. That's what I was, you know, that's stuff that I was hearing on my records, that in France, as fantastic as the musicians were, it was not the same sound. In New York, suddenly I heard people and I was like, oh, that's the sound I'm looking for. So I needed to immerse myself in that and go back to what I was listening when I was a kid, and put myself in that situation of playing with those musicians with that sound and see what happened. You know, it didn't exactly go this way, because I ended up meeting somebody like Ari, who's very special, and playing with François, you know, was not from New York, obviously, and starting this other trio and going completely another way, which was to do something that was completely different from the sound that I was, you know, in a way attracted to. So music played a little trick on me, like, hey, you're not going there, you're going there, man. And I obeyed, you know. The other reason, which is maybe less of a good reason, but is that I was seeing all the French musicians, you know, really admire the American musician, and rightly so. But they were always in a situation of inferiority. And I'm not saying that from a musical point of view. I'm saying that from a career point of view, you know, I mean, the American came to Paris and they were like, you know, with an attitude, sometimes a little bit too much of an attitude. And they were like, you know, we're the team. We're Team USA, you know? And the French people were like, oh, that's so and so is coming. And I kind of didn't like that. Maybe I was too pretentious, and for that, I had an example to follow, which was the example of Martial Solal, fantastic French pianist, as you know, who had that same attitude. He was like, yeah, we're not less good than them. We're different, but we're not less good. And I was like, I don't like that attitude of like putting yourself below someone automatically, because we're all human beings at the end of the day, you know. And Miles Davis hired a lot of European musicians, so did Keith Jarrett, you know. And I was like, you know, we can play, but there's no reason for us to put ourselves in a situation. And so moving to New York, I think I tried to escape that thing too. You know, I wouldn't say it's a bad reason, but it's maybe a less of a musical reason, obviously.
You mentioned Ari, and I mean, I know Francois played on your first album, you know, with Tony and the trio album.
Yes.
And
Oh my God, you have that. Wow, that's an old
come
one.
on, that's a beautiful one with Bassist Blues and that stuff and Olio.
It's not bad. I mean, yeah, I like some of it less, but yeah. It's a long time ago, man.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. So with Francois, you had a connection already, but
oh yeah.
How did your story with Ari begin? And you know, you did that beautiful album together in that club, Sweet Basil, and so how were your beginnings in New York and your connection with Ari? How did that happen?
Well, it went in the most natural way during a jam session. I was small. There were those night jam sessions, and I went there a lot, you know. And I heard some fantastic musicians there. People who never made it from a career point of view. I don't see their names anywhere. And people who never came to jam session, now they're considered as geniuses. Sometimes not.
Yeah, okay. That's a different story.
You get me, right?
Yeah.
And if they went to jam session, maybe it would have been different. They would have gotten, you know, that's what I like in the old time of Miles Davis and people who went to jam sessions. And if somebody sucked, you know, everybody knew he sucked.
Yep.
Now it's up to the power that be, journalists and record companies decide who's a genius, and I think that's very wrong. Okay, enough said for now.
I agree, man.
But at the time I went to jam session in the naive impression that's what was really important to build a reputation, you know, and be known by musicians. And it turned out not to be the case, and I think regretfully in terms of what music should be and what the process should be. But I'm happy I did it because, first of all, I did it in a very honest way. I learned a lot from it, you know, about my qualities and my shortcomings. And one day I just started playing Well You Needn't by Thelonious Monk. I remember it to this day. And there was the upright piano and the drummer was in my back. I didn't see who was playing. And I stopped playing and I'm like, man, something's happening here. It's wow. And I was hearing that drum thing and I was like, that person doesn't play like anybody else. And something's really happening right now. I didn't know the guy it could have been a guy, it could have been a woman, a man, it could have been black, white, red, young, old. I have no idea. It was just that musical entity that transcended the whole thing. And we kind of like bounced off each other in a way that was like almost like, wow, that's miraculous. It's the beauty of it is that I didn't know who that was in terms of the human. It was just all about the music. That's something that to me is important is music, nothing else. No politics, no blah blah, no nothing. No, like I said, I paid the price for that, but I'm happy I'm like this. And so I turned around, couldn't see him because he was. And then at the break, I see this guy who looks like an angel, like super young with blue eyes. I'm like, that cannot be him. And he came and said, wow, we just played Well You Did, and it was incredible. I was like, you're the drummer? You look like Jude Law. That can be, you know, like. Actually, I'm kind of lying. Jude Law was too young at the time. I can't remember what I said, but he looked like an actor, like a, you know.
Yeah.
I said, wow, you're the devil. You don't look like the devil. You look like an angel. Something's wrong. So anyway, and the first thing I kind of like heard was that I knew Francois was in New York, and I could hear indistinctly, but I could still feel something with these two people together. I was like, we have to try. So I kind of invited Francois to a jam session with Ari. We went to a friend of ours, a great pianist named Frank Amsterdam, who had a very nice apartment in New York, in Brooklyn, with a grand piano. And we started playing, and from the first seconds, it was like, okay. It was like Oppenheimer, you know, the Manhattan Project. It was like, it was like really like, for me, it was like really an explosion. It was like nothing I had like experienced before. And I said, well, we have to do this. You know, there was
Mm.
no question. We have to do this. It really happened immediately. I remember from the first bars, it was there. And
Yeah.
so I had a trio at the time, and I had to explain to the other guy that, well, I think there's something I need to do right now. And so we started playing together. We started recording. We started gigging, and we had a beautiful few years. Yeah, obviously, and we're still playing together. But the few years after that were really, yeah, it was a very special adventure for sure.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. That's why I ask it, because like when I listen to the last one you heard the song, you just feel the chemistry there. It's just like you start playing something, it's like loops. You know
Yeah.
exactly where you're going, even though you don't know. You know what I mean? It's like really, it's interesting to hear the
Well,
chemistry.
when I play with them, I don't play the piano. It's like almost that
Yeah,
there is this entity that takes over
yeah,
and takes us and make. It's almost like playing solo at
what you said. Yeah,
threefold
yeah,
solo. I don't know if you know what I'm saying.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just there is this entity that just catches us and does what it wants with us, and we're just like, okay.
yeah.
So it's yeah. I have felt that with other people, but it's true that with that particular trio, yeah, it's something special.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's something better or
No, no,
I
like
don't
different.
want
Yeah,
it's there is a certain type of intensity which is very particular to that particular trio for sure,
yeah,
in terms of that fusion, of that synergy, of that chemistry, like people say,
yeah,
for sure.
exactly. Uh, you mentioned Richard Bona before. Like, how did you end up meeting him? You were already in New York, right? Like, what's the
Oh,
story
no,
with
no, no, no.
Richard?
I met him years before in Paris
Oh, really? Okay.
with a band put together by a beautiful musician, with drummer and singer named Francis Lassus, who wrote his own songs and beautiful material. And we were having those rehearsals on a weekly basis in this very weird place in Paris. It was very, very interesting, very fascinating. And one day he brought this young guy from Cameroon, and we started playing, and I was like,
Mm,
same, punched in the face, like there's always this feeling of being sent to another place, same. And something very, very, very physical, when
mm,
you meet somebody like that. It's physical. It's not like, oh, this guy plays great. It's not that. It's like, okay. And so we started playing, and there was that, and we stayed in touch, and we played a lot. And then when he moved to New York a little bit later than me, was an instant success, and rightly so, and
mm.
played with pretty much everybody. And one day he called me and he said, would you like to play with Harry Belafonte? I was like, me? I love Harry Belafonte, but me? What I'm doing. He said, oh, he's going to love you. I'm like, really? So he called me, and that's how I met Harry Belafonte and ended up playing a few years with him as
Oh, really?
keyboardist and then musical director. And
I didn't
I
know
love
this
the
one.
man who, as you know, died recently too,
Yeah,
When my mother heard I played with Harry Belafonte, she almost collapsed on the floor. She was
that was the
crazy in love.
victory. Yeah.
She was crazy in love with him when she was young. She was like, "This is the best looking man I've ever." And she was in love with him, and she couldn't believe I was playing with him. And we did the picture together with Ari, and I gave the picture to my mother, and that was the best thing that she didn't. She liked my jazz music. She liked the fact that I play jazz, but that totally, like, that was the high point for sure. But I had a great time with Ari, and with Harry, I should be precise, because Ari and Harry are two different people. And it was a great experience. I learned a lot playing with him. I learned a lot about the aura, the presence, the precision, the communication.
Mm,
He was one of a kind. He was very, very special, fantastic man, very captivating man, very like really. You could easily fall under his spell.
yeah, I can
I,
imagine.
I kind of imagine, I've never known Miles personally, but I kind of imagine the same kind of personality, like, who really, grabs you. It was a great few years being with
Mm,
them.
beautiful. Uh, Jean-Michel, I wanted to ask you, when I read the names you've played with, I mean, again, we're with names, but still, I wanted, uh, me being a guitarist, I saw you played with John Abercrombie, and then you played with Michael Brecker, and Like, how did all these occasions happen? Like, especially
But that
Abercrombie, do
was
you remember?
those were more one-time things, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Brecker, I played with him once, unfortunately only once, in a recording with Richard Bona, actually, on a Richard Bona tune, under Richard's name.
Yeah.
It went great. We had a great time. I mean, it was like one tune, but I was like, woo, you know. Fortunately, it never happened again. Abercrombie, it happened twice, maybe. But those were very one-time occasions.
Okay.
And it's hard for me to say why. You know, I would have liked to be a sideman of people like that more, but for some reason, it never really happened. So perhaps it's my, you know, it's my personality, or maybe it's something in my way of being, or my attitude. I remember talking about that to somebody, and he said, "Well, you know, Errol Garner and Ahmad Jamal have, or
Yeah, Ahmad
Martial
Jamal is
Solal,
the same. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
they've never been called as signmen, so maybe
Yeah.
you're part of that clan." And I said, "Well, if that's the case, then I'm honored. You know, that's good. You know." But I think, yeah, I think perhaps that's what it is, or perhaps something else. But no, I would have loved to do it more, but you know, my path has been different. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
so that's how it is.
That's true. It's Errol and Ahmad. Yeah, exactly. Those guys also were band leading.
Well,
Many
you
many
know,
musicians out there are band leaders primarily. Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
so or Django Reinhardt for that
Django,
matter.
yeah.
You know, I think perhaps, you know, yeah, perhaps I was really passionate about a certain way of making music, and perhaps, you know, people they're looking for a different thing in a sideman. I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe there is a social element,
Mm,
not being from the Americas. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to double guess what happened. I think my career has been atypical. You know, I mean, there are tons of other questions I could ask myself. You know. Why I've never been in downbeat polls, and why
Oh,
this and
that's
why
let's
that.
not go there. Yeah,
No. But I mean, I'm
I know
saying
what
that
you mean.
almost like a joke. You know, I think it's, you know, I mean, I see when I see my path, I think I have in a way maybe missed some opportunities, but perhaps it has been beneficial in terms of my music, because
Yeah,
I end up making music only for the sake of music, which I think is probably the best way to make it. So
yeah,
if I did believe in God, which I honestly have to say is not the case, but if I did believe in God, I would say, well, He has put me in on this path for a reason. What I say rather than that is, well, let's enjoy the positive side of being
definitely.
left alone and making music for the sake of music the way I want to make it, and being free. I feel very free and very. I can make music exactly the way I want with the people I want to make music with. That's a
Exactly.
privilege.
Yeah,
That's really a privilege these days, you know.
it is.
So
Yeah, exactly. Uh, I also wanted to ask you, you know, you moved from Paris to New York and now you're in Montreal. And how has that been for you? You know, you're at the McGill University, which is a beautiful university. Like, but how is the musical scene in Montreal? How has that influenced you? I mean, obviously, the jazz festival is one of the biggest in the world, but still, you.
yeah, but yeah, the festival is a bit the tree hiding the forest. You know how it is. But the forest is beautiful. There are lots of great musicians. Again, I'm not going to talk in terms of scene. You're bringing that word back.
Oh yeah,
But
sorry. Yeah.
no, but it's true. There is a scene here. I mean, honestly, I was kidding. I was I cannot use profanities on this interview, but you know, I was fucking with you. Anyway, no, there is a scene. There is a lot of good things going on in Montreal. Not only in jazz, by the way, in
Oh, really?
in classical music, in hip hop, in you know, indie rock and vocal. You know, there's lots of stuff going on here. That's not to mention circus and dance, and it's a very rich city culturally, very
Mm.
rich. The way it has influenced me is that it has, unlike New York, where there is much more competition and everybody wants to kill everybody else, and everything tends to be based on technique and
Yeah,
impressing, being impressive and playing fast and
yeah,
adding another octave to the tenor saxophone or stuff like that. Here, it's you have less of that, and it tends to bring you back to, okay, let's make music. You know, it has kind of calmed me quite a bit and probably put me in a better place, like rounded off my universe in a way. And I think being in Montreal has helped me say, okay, this is the way I want to make music. And
Yeah.
like, for example, when I was mentioning, you know, those totally improvised concerts and stuff, here you feel like you have less of a, you know, it's a less the, you know,
Less
that
pressure.
will be,
Yeah.
the timing will be right to say that it's less of the Olympic Games of jazz. You know what I'm saying? With the gold medal, with the, you know, and I'm not even sure the jury is really up to the task. But you know, you're more like music became my childish passion again.
Yeah, what we started
You know,
with.
I
Yeah,
became more of a
basically, yeah.
music lover. New York tends to make you more of a musician.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying. You
I know
know,
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
and there is something to me not always positive about that. And in Montreal, of course, it's a smaller city. Of course, you could say that the level is not the same. You could say that there are less musicians who are really, you know, super impressive, or you know, all this is kind of, you know, there is truth to that. But you have wonderful musicians. You have
Yeah.
people who are really unknown outside of Montreal. You know, we go back to the reason why I left Paris. You know, you have people here who are every bit as good as some people I heard in New York at the highest
Sure.
level. But there is this element of making music in a natural way again. You know, not for competition and not for
Yeah.
the, you know, and not for the impact it can have on your professional life. And I think that has been very beneficial to me and has put me back in a better place than I was at the end in New York.
Yeah. You kind of ended like this improv really nicely, but I still wanted to ask you, like, what's your
Sure.
plans for the upcoming months? And I mean, do you have any plans of coming to Europe, or like any new records in the preparation, or tours?
New
Or...
records, yes. You know, I'm working with a really nice record company called Just in Time. So
Yeah.
we have plans to release some more stuff, solo stuff, and hopefully also trio stuff.
Oh, beautiful.
I'm still playing a lot with other people as a sideman, which I love to do. You know, I told you recently that a few minutes ago that maybe sideman was not my vocation, but that's another positive thing in Montreal is that for some reason I've started playing much more as a sideman, which I totally love, which I really enjoy a lot. So there are like releases with that.
Beautiful.
Europe, not so much. I used to tour Europe quite a bit in the late 90s and early 2010s, but since a few years, it's not been the case that much. And but my schedule is pretty rich in other countries, including, of course, Canada and the US, North America. So I play a lot in Montreal and around Montreal. So that's good because I can play music without having to go to airports, which kind of is pleasant. So there are many plans. But to me, that's the important thing is to, you know, keep being I wouldn't say the best musician that I can possibly be, but I would say being, you know, Thelonious Monk said that the geniuses were people most like themselves. I don't know if I'm a genius. That's not for me to judge. You know, time is the one who judges us at the end, and that's the jury I trust. You know, but I would say I'm trying to be more and more just more like myself, like
Honest with yourself.
centered
Yeah.
more and more on what I feel musically. And I think that's something that playing with all those people and playing, you know, different contexts, sideman, leader, solo trio, that really is what helps me the most get to that point. And again, reach a certain form of serenity and of simplicity. Because I feel like, you know, I don't want to end this interview on a criticism, but I feel like music sometimes has become too complex for its own good, you know.
I agree. I agree.
And people want to hear simple melodies sometimes, simple stuff. There was somebody in the audience recently at one of my trio concerts, and he said, "I can hear you sing when I hear you play." That was the best compliment I've had in a long time. I was like, "Stop there." I'm happy with that compliment. He said, "It's rare these days. You hear jazz, and it's all like, you know." But I can hear you sing. And I was like, perfect. I love you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for the compliment. You made me happy. You know, like get to that element of simplicity of physical vocal-like simplicity. That's what I heard actually when I was listening to people like Dix or Louis Armstrong or Johnny Hodges or people like Errol Garner. Errol Garner, and Keith Jarrett mentioned that Errol Garner was a singer at the piano. You could hear, he was much more than that. He was a rhythm section, a singer. He was so many things, man. Errol he's an underrated pianist, actually, in my opinion.
Definitely, yeah.
And Errol Garner, to me, that's it. That's what I want to become more and more with the time that I have left, is somebody who plays and people hear the music in a simple way, like almost like being physically touched by a singer, like Billie Holiday or Sinatra and people like that. So I still have a few years to be more and more like that, and that's my main plan. And let's hope it goes well. I can only hope.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Definitely. Sir, you ended so nicely. It's like the last chord was played out, so I'll end it here. But thanks,
sense of construction. That's because I improvised from beginning to end.
Exactly. No,
it was great to meet you, man. It was great to talk to you, and really, really let me know when the interview is up there. And I'm not gonna. I don't really like listening to myself and seeing my face, but I will make an effort.
Thanks so much again, Jean-Michel, for sharing.